Okay, we can go ahead and get started. My name is Lauren Greedy. I am the program manager for Alumni and Donor Experience for the University of Cincinnati Alumni Association. Thank you all for joining us this evening for UnCorked's virtual holiday party with Phoenix and J. Matt Nichols, a wine rep from Cutting Edge Selections, and who we partnered with in July for a virtual tasting, and then was also our wine rep at the holiday party last year. J. Matt, we're excited to have you with us again.
Oh, so glad to be back. Fun.
Yes. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. As with virtual tastings in the past, you have entered this event on mute, and if you could stay on mute, that would be great until JMAT opens it up for questions, or if you have a question, you could also use the chat box to type your question if you don't feel like unmuting yourself, and I'll help monitor those as well. And this tasting is going to be recorded and will be made available for you all at a later date. We hope that you each got a little UnCorked aerator that was in with your wines when you picked them up from the Phoenix. A nice little holiday gift for you all, and to say happy holidays and thank you for joining us and continually supporting UnCorked. I would like to introduce Jen Heisey, the Vice President of Alumni and Donor Experience, who is joining us this evening. Jen.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I am so excited to see you all. I'm getting just a little bit of feedback, so if you're not on mute while doing the presentations, I would just recommend that you go on mute, and then ultimately, if you would like to interact, just unmute yourself and you can ask questions, or you can always use the chat feature as well. So thank you so much. And good evening. As Lauren said, my name is Jennifer Heisey. I'm the Vice President of Alumni and Donor Experience for the UC Foundation and Alumni Association. And it's my pleasure to formally welcome you to the UnCorked virtual holiday party with the Phoenix on this first night of Hanukkah. I'm thrilled to be back with you. For those of you who are regulars, you know that I used to be able to come to these a little bit more often. Now I attend on an occasion, but I have to say it's really an incredible treat to be with you tonight. And I appreciate that you're all here. Some of you might remember meeting my significant other, Greg Forrest. He's with us tonight too, but he's doing some of the running back and forth to the kitchen, so he's not here right now, but you'll probably see his face here with me tonight this evening. This program is really one of many that we offer through the Alumni Association, and we plan a variety of experiences, some social, some educational, some geared for personal or professional development, but really they're all intended to bring dynamic Bearcats like you together to enhance your lives. And by actively participating in our offerings and experiences, you really truly are harnessing the power of our alumni network. There are Bearcats all over the world, over 315,000 alumni in 127 countries. But that really makes virtual programs like this really convenient and rewarding because we have people that tune in from all over. I am really thrilled to see some familiar faces, but we're always excited when alumni and friends join us for the first time. So if some of you haven't been with us before, welcome. We promise to continue to bring opportunities like this one where we can showcase the talents of our alumni, create occasions for alumni to connect in meaningful ways, and really hopefully provide something, programs where you can learn a little something along the way. So I'm excited to tune in today. I'm really appreciative of our partnership with the Phoenix. And I really look forward to a time in 2021 when we can actually gather together again. So thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy your experience tonight, of course. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, joyful everything, and go Bearcats.
Thanks, Jen. J-Matt, I'll go ahead and pass it on over to you.
Thanks for having me back, everybody. Hopefully everyone is well. It's good to see some smiling faces, even if you're a half inch by a half inch on my screen this time around. Does everybody have wine? That's always going to be my primary concern. Yes, good. Okay, that's very good. So tonight you'll start with a sparkling wine. And if you have some bonus glassware around, I think it'd maybe be a little bit fun if you were to pour a little bit into just a normal white wine glass and then some into a stem, like a champagne flute style. I think this is kind of fun of doing this at home. A lot of restaurants don't want to dirty up, 50 glasses for an experiment. I personally drink sparkling wine out of a white wine glass at home. And realistically, what you're going to get, and you can experience this yourself possibly, is that if you drink sparkling wine out of a white glass, you're going to get a lot more aromatic intensity. And you're going to, in the narrow flute, you're going to retain the bubbles longer. Not going to judge anybody here, but my bubbles don't last very long at house, so I don't really need to save those in a narrow tulip glass or flute. But yeah, let's I'll talk a little bit about the wine itself, and then you guys are welcome to just kind of throw some questions out here, and I'll try to do my best to answer and whatnot. So you have a multi-vintage wine from Pierre de Lise in Burgundy. So Burgundy, very traditional Chardonnay, Pinot Noir growing region in Central Eastern France. This one happens to be a 100% Chardonnay, and it happens to be done method champenois, which is the exact same process that they use in Champagne, but because Champagne is a protected term, they refer to it as a Cremant de Bourgogne. So you might see that kind of verbiage on your label there. I personally drink this stuff at home all the time. I think that it's got the right level of breadiness and toastiness, cleanliness, brightness, and I do think bubbles make things better. That's just my opinion. You can kind of do you. Oh, I like that. Nice flute. And we were thinking about pairing with your menus here. I'm going to pull that up so that I don't misread anything or misremember because, well, my memory is what it is. And I really wanted to kind of have something that would go with the vinaigrette on this opening dish. And I like to think that things that are very bright and exuberant and bubbly, they kind of help with some of those cruciferous vegetables like Brussels sprouts, which if you didn't know that a Brussels sprout is one of many different types of mustard plant, now you do. Other ones would include broccoli and cauliflower and other things like that. They're all genetically cousins. But I mean, they're all highly educated people. You knew that. I knew you knew all that stuff already. And then hopefully with the pomegranate seeds too, like that's going to bring a matching intensity of brightness. So that's really fun to me. That's where I wanted to start. With a 3-course meal, I think it's super traditional to start with a sparkler, have a showcase red wine, and then to finish with something a little bit sweet. And that's pretty exciting to me. I think it's good. I will compliment the leaders of the group here. Aerators are one of the wine gadgets that are actually legitimate and improve the quality of wines, unlike some other things out there in the markets these days. Not really important for your sparkling wine or your sweet wine, not really important for your white wines, but it's a really nice way to get your red wines opened up in a hurry. And I have one too that I literally will just pour straight from the bottle into the glass, and it saves me from decanting, which while I love to do for you in a restaurant because it's very formal and very nice to see how much care we're putting in, it's more dishes at home, and I don't like those. And I'm usually in charge because my wife is a better cook. So that type of stuff. So I'm seeing here, I'm looking through my chat here. Any questions about Method Champenois? It's really boring and exciting simultaneously. Let's see. It's an aerator thing. Cool. So essentially, Champagne is the coldest wine region in France. And historically, they have had a lot of struggles getting wine completely ripe before harvest. Less of a case as Europe has had an increasingly warm climate over the past several decades. But what happened is that between the ingenuity of the British making really excellent high quality glass in industrial Manchester and London in the it would be the 18th century and maybe even more so into the early 19th century, Spanish mushroom shaped corks, and then the ingenuity of French making the wine twice, which to me is kind of like, I don't know who invented toast, but like saying, oh, this bread's really good, but it would be better if I cooked it again. I don't know who came up with that. I like toast. It's kind of how I feel about sparkling wine. So basically what they would do is they would make a still wine, usually very bitter, very dry, very high acid, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of elevated alcohol. And it was not always very pleasurable to drink. So Champagne really didn't take off into its own kind of wine region that we know of today that's very successful until after a whole bunch of these things came together. The Spanish corks, the British glass, which was much stronger than French glass, so it could actually hold the ATMs of pressure, allowing the bubbles to stay in the bottle. And then the French ingenuity of saying, let's re-ferment this stuff in a bottle, and then we'll clean it out, add a little bit of dosage, which is a sugar mixture to kind of adjust the sweetness of the wine after the second ferment, and we'll drink sparkling wine. They make it all over the world now. In fact, before, the first place in the world to make sparkling wine was Cremant de Limoux, which is down in the Languedoc. And so, if you are not an expert in French geography, it's on the Mediterranean coast, south of Bordeaux and west of like Provence, and where all the famous people go and do like festivals of movies and such. Essentially, it's a wonderful thing. And hopefully you find that it's really nice. I love sparkling wine with things that are fatty and rich. I love Chardonnay specifically with things like that. And I think Ricotta Salata is also going to be a nice little touch here to match up your things. So looking at chat. Yeah. And then about Pierre Delis, this is a small winery. They produce only this one wine. Well, actually, they produce a rosé as well. They produce two wines, both sparkling. The white is going to be all Chardonnay, and then there's a little bit of Pinot Noir in the red wine. And if you were to look at a map of Burgundy, you would see that the Cremant de Bourgogne region is kind of an overlay where it isn't Village, Premier Cru, or Grand Cru level Chardonnay or Pinot Noir production. So it's nice. You don't have to pay Merlot prices for this wine, and you get a pretty nice drink out of it. All right, cool. Thanks, Joyce. Great. All right. If anybody wants to unmute, and yeah. So I think cost-wise, oh, you're making me do math. Let's see, 9, 15. I think this wine is probably around $15 in a retail shop. I know that our company bought a container of it when we didn't know what was going to happen with tariffs earlier in the year. Tariffs so long ago that scared us all before a little virus did. And essentially, there was a proposal because airplane companies were fighting to raise the cost of European wine 25% to us American consumers. So we bought a ton of it. And to date, that negotiation has been tabled. Unfortunately, there are not additional tariffs on top of the ones that started in 2019. And yes, that should be holding right around $15. If you want to make sure it stays that much, you could write, depending on what side of town you live in, you could write Steve Chabot or Brad Wenstrup and say, get rid of the tariffs, please. I'm on the Wenstrup side of town, and he has worked very hard to help us, actually, and has spoken with us at Cutting Edge directly. Regardless of your feeling on his politics, he is listening to his constituents in this matter. Nothing like politics at the table during the holidays. Oh, my goodness. I didn't even make it to the second one. So cheers. That's great. So as far as availability goes, and this is what you're always going to hear when you're really working with Cutting Edge, you just want to find like a small retailer. It's a little bit more challenging on the west side because there are fewer independent retailers than there are on the east side of town or downtown. But realistically, if you go into any shop and ask for it specifically, they're probably going to be able to get in touch with it, particularly because you know who the distributor is. That makes their life pretty easy. And I'm sure that if you ever really wanted it, the Phoenix would be happy to provide it for you if you were downtown and wanted to swing by with just a little bit of notice. That's pretty good. Yep, Marty's definitely has it. If you're across the river, I know that they carry it at Party Source as well as Depths and, what's the other one? Cork and Bottle also carries this wine if you happen to be across the river. Although right now, going across the river is a pain. If you didn't know, the bridge caught on fire a little while ago. And traffic's a little wonky right now. I made my first journey across the river since that occurred today. And I made it back safely, but it took a little longer. So yeah. How's food? Can you all let me know how food is in the chat? Or tell me, you can unmute, please. Feel free to unmute, ask some questions. I'm happy to open it up for questions and the like here.
What difference did you say we would notice between the different kinds of glasses?
Yeah, so if you have, a white wine glass, your nose fits in it a lot better. So you should smell a lot more clearly the wine, a lot more aromatic intensity. And then realistically, that narrow flute, it's going to be a little bit harder to get the aromatics out, but it's going to help you retain bubbles. So don't do this, but if you were to forget that those were poured and come back to them a few hours later, the bubbles might be gone in the white wine glass, and they might still be kind of trickling up the center of the wine glass. It's been really in vogue in sommelier community and fine dining to really eliminate flutes from the restaurants entirely, because the wines typically show better in the white wine glass. Glassware costs money. Flutes are narrow and tall and break very easily. So there's a few different reasons for that. I have flutes at my house. We love it for toasts. And I love to put Miller High Life in them as well, because I think the Miller High Life is really, truly what the flute was designed for. Like, it's really a good combination. Retains that bubble, and it really showcases that weedy sweetness of one of America's finest beers. Let's see. Very good. Delicious. All right, cool. That's a good pairing. Yeah, and then I guess I'll kind of run this down. I can't remember exactly who all has been here before, and I think there's some new folks here. But if you're tasting a wine, it's really, really convenient if with that first sip, you get enough in your mouth to kind of coat all of the different surfaces of your mouth. You want to make sure you can get all of the structural elements kind of touching off all the hot points in your mouth, so you can feel a little bit of the bubbles, the sweetness or lack thereof, some of the alcohol, some of the richness, glycerin, those types of things. And while it's been scientifically disproven that your tongue has flavor zones, like, I don't know, you all remember, like, sweet is on the tip of your tongue and bitter's on the back of your tongue. Science has completely ruled that out as wrong. But you will find that different things are activated more strongly in different parts of your mouth, particularly when you get to tannic structures, which is what makes our mouth feel dry when we're drinking wine, or a cup of tea that's too strong. That's really how I learned about tannin, was completely forgetting about tea bags and tea for hours on end, and then feeling like I was somehow drinking and making my mouth drier. So yeah, a little bit of fun there. Let's see. There we go. Shipping a beer. Love it. And then, yeah, I don't know how fast we're moving through things, but I can, you all can kind of let me know as you're moving through the courses. I didn't know how complex the directions were this time around. Did you have to break the steer down yourself and pull the fillet out of the animal? Or did they send it to you nice in a box and say, put it in the oven at this temperature for this long of time, hopefully?
Yes.
That's great.
Yes, cook the fillet and then put the potatoes and vegetables in the oven.
Yeah, awesome. That's fantastic. So again, sparkling wine in this case too, I think, is a great aperitif, which is really a fancy way to say you can drink it without any accompaniment. And yeah, so this is good. I mean, I really like bubbles, and I really like when bubbles are done well. And I guess, again, I'm talking about this method champois, the champagne style production. What's really kind of special about it is it takes more time when you do a secondary fermentation in the bottle itself. It just takes time for those bubbles to integrate into the liquid. It takes time for the lees to fall out of the mixture. For those of you that don't remember last time, lees are the spent yeast cells of fermentation. So you get those in any type of fermentation, beer, as well as the beer stocks that make spirits. If you were to have something, I'm sure many of you have had Prosecco before, hopefully. So Prosecco is made in a completely different way. So they make the still wine, just as they would in method champenois. And then they basically do the secondary fermentation in a tank that's pressurized and sealed tightly. A man named Charmat from Italy created this, and it's referred to often as the Charmat method. But if you think of a tank kind of the size of a private dining room or a small conference room, they will keep that under pressure for that secondary fermentation, and then they will filter the wine off under pressure into the bottles. And you don't get as much contact with the lees, which is why Prosecco is usually brighter and fresher than Champagne or Franciacorta or Cava or Cremants or quality sparkling wines from America. There are a few, though harder to find all the time. So it's not about right or wrong. You just have to pay more in the Charmat method. You don't pay more. You pay less in time, and you get cleaner, brighter tastes and aromatics. When you have the time in contact with those leaves, you get a more well integrated wine, a more complex wine. But that's not always what we want. How many of you all like Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand? I know I do. That's not a complex wine. It's beautiful, it's bright, it's fresh, and it's fruity, and that's it. It is awesome. And that's kind of how I would liken the two different things. Whereas if you were going to have, a rich, complex oak-aged Chardonnay, it's very different than the New Zealand Sauvignon. Neither one is necessarily better or worse, but they're just different. And that's pretty fun. Yeah, that's kind of the wine bit on the sparkling. Everybody drink more sparkling wine. Have I given you the statistics about Cincinnati and sparkling wine? Probably not. Okay.
I don't think
So
so.
as a community, we are the number 43 sparkling wine consumption market in America. And that sounds pretty good until you realize we're like the 18th largest metro in the country. So we need to drink a lot more sparkling wine just to balance out our numbers and not have other states like Illinois and Chicago and New York and California and Texas get all the really cool stuff, because that's usually how it shakes out.
What varieties
I
do really make a dent in, J-Matt?
Say again, Russell?
Like, what varieties does Cincinnati really make a dent in?
So Cincinnati is really into Prosecco. We are really into Chardonnay, Cabernet, and Sauvignon, and Moscato. Moscato has been the fastest growing consumption category in Cincinnati for like 3 years in a row, which is cool because we have a very similar to Moscato as our dessert wine tonight. But yeah, we're pretty much on the beaten path of largely well-known varieties here in Cincinnati. Particularly on the retail side, we have a lot of great Italian restaurants, so we do really well with some of the Italian varieties, but it usually is consumption on premise or at the restaurant as opposed to like people taking it home. Like, I'm sure that if I would have paired a beautiful Dolcetto as opposed to a Merlot blend with the filet, you would have loved it. But that maybe is something more you have like when you have a steak at Nicola's or Forno or something, and less so about, doing it at the house. We tend to be a little traditional. But yeah, that's what I see. I sell a ton of Riesling personally in Cincinnati, but I think that's because we have the best, most inexpensive Riesling in the world in our portfolio. And it's just one of those things where the quality far exceeds the price. So it's pretty hard to beat. So you've probably seen the high def in a restaurant before. It's just so good for the dollars. Such a great value. So yeah, that's good. All right, Bearcats. Yep, Prosecco's nice. Great. Oh, they stunned the cow. That's good. Makes me think of that Javier Bardem, Cormac McCarthy movie where he's like got the cattle stunner. This country, no, old man, no, I forget. My brain is gone. Somebody knows the movie I'm talking about, or the book, because we're all such highly educated. We all love Cormac McCarthy. High American literature here. No Country for Old Men. That's it. Thank you. That's great. All right, second course is in progress. That's good to know. So you have the Highway 12 Merlot. I'll talk a little bit about why it says those things on the label. I'll talk a little bit about the wine itself and why I think it was a solid pairing. Essentially, Highway 12 is a negociant. So a couple of guys out in California who grew up in the wine industry, whose parents owned wineries and made a lot of wine, decided to try to make great wine, but without owning anything at all. So what they do is they purchase fruit from their friends and friends of their family and fathers and parents and mothers and grandmothers. And essentially they do is they rent warehouses to make the wine, and they rent and trade off fermenting tanks and barrels and such. So they have this extremely low overhead. It's really, I think, 5 or 6 people in the whole company, and I think only 2 or 3 of them are full-time year-round. And the Highway 12 is the primary road that goes north to south through Sonoma. So if you've ever seen like Guy Fieri like took in for all the people that are having fires and stuff, that main drag is Highway 12. So that's where the name came from, and it really gets you through all the diverse locations of Sonoma. So this wine is primarily sourced in Sonoma County, a little bit from Napa, a little bit from Lake as well, Lake being north of Napa, and then a little bit from Mendocino, which is also just north of Sonoma. I always feel like it's a geography lesson when I'm talking about wine. I apologize for that. But yeah, so that's great. In California, if 75% of the makeup of the wine is consistent or contiguous, you get to put on the label. So if 75% of your fruit comes from California, you can put California on your label, even if the other 25% comes from South Africa or Australia or Chile. This is all American. I'm just mentioning that just so you know. And then if you see a variety on there, in this case, you probably see Merlot on the label. 75% of that blend needs to be Merlot. In this case, it's 85%, and then 15% Petite Verdot, which I think is what really brings a creamy richness to this wine. Hopefully, you're all experiencing that on course number 2. Filet, to me, is a very clean cut of meat. It's not particularly high in fat. If you're doing things like truffle, you get a lot of earthy character. Potatoes, I think really absorb whatever you want to put in them. At our house, we like to put a lot of dairy and chives and salt and black pepper in our potatoes, and it really shows that way. So the Merlot with the Petite Verdot is really going to be a clean, moderate, silky tannin, as opposed to a very aggressive, bold tannin like you might get from Syrah or Cabernet Sauvignon. And those, to me, would usually go better with fattier cuts of beef. So that's why we wanted to have a smooth wine for you on this course. I also think the Highway 12 wines are just really, really easy to drink. And that is something that I appreciate. I don't think everything needs to be overthought. I think very hard about that statement also. Let's see. All right. Good. How is everything else there? How did course number 2 come out? I see thumbs up. I see good. Delish. Very good. Very good. I'm almost nervous here because it's quiet and it makes me wonder what the kids are doing in the house right now because I'm on the porch. Hopefully there's no fires coming out of the door here anytime soon.
How do I know this is a blend? Because it just says Merlot on it.
Yeah, the only way to know is to talk to somebody who knows. A lot of how wine is sold is through marketing and simplicity, right? So if they were to put red blend on that, that might be kind of the target audience they're trying to sell that wine to. That would be an appropriate label. You could say like California or Sonoma made red blend. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a Merlot. Specifically, Highway 12 makes a red blend that has 5 varietals in it. They make a Cabernet. They make a Merlot. They also make some wines from Carneros, a Pinot Noir, and a Chardonnay that are all 100% of that. So realistically, if you ever wanted to know what was in the wine, ask the server / sommelier / manager at the restaurant, or the shopkeep or the wine steward in the wine store. And then if you really need to get down to the really trying to figure it out, hop on a website. American wineries tend to be better at this, and Australian wineries tend to be better at this than the rest of the world. And if you ever scroll to the very, very bottom of the websites, you'll see something called trade. And that's basically all the technical information that they give to people to sell the wine. So there's nowhere on this bottle that you would know that it is not more than Merlot. I'm telling you because I think that's the 15% that isn't is really something that brings a lot of character to the wine. I think we talked about this back in July, but there's just not a lot of rules that are functional on wine labels, right? I'm pretty sure that every single bottle of wine in America has a statement about sulfur and sulfides being in there. Science has kind of borne out that sulfides are really not as bad as we thought, particularly in wine. I think the example I love to use is if you've ever been to Kroger or any other lovely grocery store and seen a packet of raspberries. I'm thinking of Driscoll's because that's what I see all the time. There are more sulfides on that pack of raspberries than a case of Highway 12 Merlot, for example. So you could drink a whole case of wine and have fewer sulfides in your system than just eating, maybe that's 2 bowls of yogurt and raspberries. So I'm not sure why that got stuck on the label, but I know that it happened in the 70s. Things that you can measure are often the things that get put on labels, So in the future, we might see pH or acidity. We might see You already have alcohol on the label. That's very measurable as well. And those things are not always super important for the wine and the quality. You know, I would actually prefer to know what's put into the wine that isn't grape juice. Like that to me would be far more functional of a label. You know, I see a great disconnect with wine and a lot of things just in American wine, like in the American culture of eating. The number of people that I see that like to shop at Whole Foods, only buy organic produce, only eat farm raised chickens and sustainably farmed salmon, and then like buy a wine that is made in a factory and full of chemicals. It's like a real big disconnect to me. But in their fairness, there's no labels about what goes into the wine, the variety and the alcohol and sulfur. Right? So you have to dig a little bit. Go ahead.
I have a question. So since it doesn't say 100% Merlot, we can assume it's Merlot and something else?
Not even that. All you know is if it says Merlot, that a minimum of 75% of the blend is Merlot. It could be 100%, and they might. And some wineries have transparency and have like functional back labels, I like to call them, you know. They'll have maybe a little blurb about the winery. Sometimes they'll have the cuvee breakdown, and sometimes they won't. I love to know what's in the wines. I love to know how they're made. I probably drink wine at a higher standard than I eat food. You know, like I'll eat some Skyline or some Gold Star or some Price Hill chili. Like I'm not mad at you. I know that that's not like the highest quality ingredients. It's delicious, you know, but like I tend to not want to do that with my wine. Again, also, I already outed myself. I'm very happy drinking Miller High Life. Like I really am. And I can't imagine that that's like organic wheat that they use to make that. You know, that just would probably not be economically viable for the Miller Brewing Company. You know what I mean? So yeah, so there's really no
What
rules.
wine do you drink with?
Go ahead.
What wine do you drink with Skyline?
I drink Dr. Pepper. That's it's Dr. Pepper's my favorite. I think actually it depends, you know, because so not being a Cincinnati native but loving the chili, I've kind of taken to it a little differently. So I eat the whole menu also. So like I'm not like married to a three-way or a cheese coney with no onions, which is what my wife orders, you know, or like the chili cheese fry. I eat it all. Like I ate the bean burrito like the first 2 years I ate at Skyline. And I've found that like really high sugar soda beverages are fantastic pairings with the food there. But bubbles, right? So I guess I would probably want to do like maybe a sparkling wine because bubbles go really well with that type of stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna go with bubbles.
Today in the paper there was a thing about Skyline chili lasagna.
Ooh,
So
I
you
love
should look it
lasagna.
up.
I will. And I actually have my own homemade Cincinnati chili recipe that I personally think is far superior to any of the shops. But that's me. You know, you got to like your own stuff the most. I just finally mastered it about a month ago, and we have literally had homemade chili every day for a month. And it's good. It's good. And it's not, it's good. It's gluten-free, unless you add spaghetti or oyster crackers, and it's actually meatless. I do a meatless version. I use Impossible ground beef because it is considerably lower fat content. If you were to use ground beef, actually what you do to make Cincinnati chili is you make the chili, you let all of that happen, and then you use ice cubes in ladles, and you scoop off all the extra fat. And that is a really time-consuming process, so I just skip it and go with Impossible ground beef. Mm-hmm.
All right, so back to the subject of blends versus 100%. We were fortunate enough to be in France and went to a champagne tasting where they explained that the majority of their champagne is blended because they wanted to taste the same year to year. So at that point, we said blends are fine with us.
Yeah, I mean, like 95% of the wine in the world is a blend. Like single varietal wines are very uncommon. Usually because these grapes are just they've kind of naturally occurred. Not all of them. Some of them were created in a lab or, you know, a very crafty farmer kind of tried to, you know, crossbreed a couple of different species or subspecies rather. But yeah, you know, and I think Merlot and Cabernet are an excellent example. You know, most Cabernet has a little bit of Merlot in it. And if you were to get a glass of pure Cabernet Sauvignon and swish it all around your mouth. There would be no activity in the center of your mouth, in your center of your tongue. Whatever the structure, amino acids, all the erythromycins and things that make up the flavor and structure of Cabernet is completely dead in your middle palate. You have a Merlot-based wine there. It's almost the complete opposite. You get all of the flavor and weight right in the middle of your mouth, and it's very lean on the exterior of your palate. So you blend a little bit of those together. You basically take the donut, which is Cabernet, and the donut hole, which is Merlot, and then you get a more well-balanced wine. With the exceptions of maybe like Pinot Noir, which is usually not blended. Most other red wines are. Nebbiolo, not so often either. But yeah, those are really the two I can think of that are least frequently in a blend. I mean, Syrah goes great with Grenache, Cab and Merlot. Zinfandel goes great with a whole bunch of different things blended into it. You will find a lot of great blends. A lot of things come together. Cabernet Franc is a great blending partner to a lot of things, though it can be pretty great on its own. White wines, you get a little bit more single variety. I think it's just about purity, and a lot of people don't take white wine very seriously, and it's just something to kind of start the evening with and get it rocking and rolling. So having things like a Sauvignon that are just like clean and bright and fresh. I want to drink this bottle real fast. Maybe it's 100 degrees outside on a patio. Maybe you just are with family that you don't want to listen to, so you listen to the glass of wine a little bit more, you know? All right, raspberries with wine. Lambrusco would be pretty good with Skyline, particularly if you like to put the hot sauce on it, you know? So we've talked a little bit about how if you add a little bit of sweetness to wine, it will help cut through spicy food. You know, I think I've always talked about having like off-dry, semi-sweet wines with spicy food. You know, very traditional to have sweet Rieslings with like Thai food and spicy Asian dishes. And yeah, I mean, I like hot sauce, so Lambrusco would be pretty fun. I think the weight, the redness of it too. I mean, it's got a lot of fruity punch to it. It would hold up to like all the tomatoes and cinnamon and allspice and clove and the primary seasonings of a Cincinnati chili. The chocolate is unsweetened, by the way. They're not putting like Hershey bars in that stuff. It's like Baker's unsweetened chocolate. It's not at all what people outside of town try to harp on. They're just wrong. It's amazing. It's a great idea to put it in there. Chocolate's fantastic. Although my 4-year-old tried the unsweetened chocolate, and that was a proud parenting moment. It was really gross for him. Let's see there. All right, filet is looking good. How are the potatoes? I'm always interested.
Very good.
Yeah. Potatoes might be my favorite food, but I'm Irish American, so that just makes me stereotypical. Yeah.
The Merlot is a good pairing with this.
Thank you. Yeah. And again, like I don't pair Merlot with all cuts of steak, but I think with filet, it's great. You know, I would also think Merlot would go really well if any of you are going to like get lucky and have a beef Wellington maybe sometime this month. I know that's a very traditional dish this time of year. A lot of people, like when I was at Boca, we were really big fans of throwing like a Béarnaise and a Bordelaise over king crab over a filet. So all that richness, I think it goes really well with Merlot. Cabernet is just a little bit astringent for that, and it kind of cuts back on your palate. Doesn't mean it's bad, and if that's what you like, you're winning, but the pairings are a little different. Also, and I always hate to say this because I sell wine and I love wine, but wine's supposed to enhance the meal, usually not the other way around. You know, you might make a specific meal because you have a nice bottle of wine that you want to open and share, but really the wine's supposed to elevate the food. So it's not really the show. It's supposed to be the accompaniment. It's the orchestra behind the great movie or behind the great singer. So it's kind of nice to think of it that way. Which is often why a lot of sommeliers like to always force you all into medium weight red wine pairings, because you're far less likely to overwhelm a dish if you have lower alcohol, lower tannin in something. Yeah. Oh yeah, beef Wellington last month. Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorites. For sure. Yeah. I think Jeremy really enjoys doing these types of menus over at the Phoenix. Like, I mean, I know he does, like, he's the chef also for the National Exemplar out in Marymount, as their sister companies. But like, I think he really gets the like the excitement of doing all of like the banquet styles, and I think he's really taken to making like the semi-prepared meals for like folks to do this type of virtual thing. You know, this is it's a fairly young concept for most restaurants to kind of provide you the ability to make your own food, but not really have to do all the work. We did Deer Restaurant and Butchery for my birthday last month, and they did a that's an awesome hat, and they did a lamb shank shepherd's pie that I would never have made it myself, and it was great, and I loved it, which was like right amount of level of cooking I wanted to do on my birthday. Let's see. Yes, love it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, if you didn't, I didn't mention the name, but Michael Sebastiani is the primary wine person involved with Highway 12. You might have seen his father's wines in shops for the past 40 years or so. The Sebastiani family's pretty well renowned in Sonoma, so you got pretty good legacy here. They're making some quality stuff. Let's see. Yeah.
J-Matt,
Go ahead.
if you weren't gonna pair this with the Merlot, like what are some other things maybe that people could consider pairing with this filet and the mashed potatoes?
Mm-hmm. So I think the best pairing would be a medium aged Tempranillo, probably from either Ribera del Duero or Rioja. Tempranillo is the most important grape in Spain. It makes super high quality wine. It also makes very clean, easy drinking, and expensive wines. But if you were talking about a Reserva level from Ribera del Duero or Rioja, it would have a little bit more acidity to it. It would actually be a little bit oakier, and but the weight of the wine would be a little bit lower. So you get a little bit more tension with the food combination. So the Merlot is really trying to match the weight, trying to be rich, silky, full, and smooth, where I think the Tempranillo would be a little bit brighter and fresher, but it would also bring a lot more of the other tones that would go well with like rapini and the potato specifically. Really well done Tempranillo that's got a little bit of age on it, and they usually age at the winery before release. You get some kind of sweet and sour kind of characteristics, which I think can really enliven such a clean, low-fat cut of steak. Realistically, I also think it goes really good with cocktails. Personally, I think filet and cocktails is a big time win. You know, I think like a Manhattan or an old fashioned is usually pretty great. That's a different kind of party. You got to watch yourself on that stuff. Delicious things can disappear quickly. But yeah, I'd probably go to Tempranillo with filet. I love Pinot Noir, but it's probably a little bit light unless you're really talking about super high end Grand Cru Burgundy, super high end Russian River, Santa Rita Hills from California, and I don't know. I don't know that the value's there. I mean, and I tell you, buy the most expensive wine on the planet if you'd like, but you start getting past $50 a bottle, and I just don't know that the quality jumps so much that the dollars make a lot of sense. I mean, I want to sell you all the wine that's hundreds of dollars, but in reality, you should really be able to find the whole spectrum of really high quality from around $20 to $50 in a retail shop in Ohio, at least. So yeah, good question. I am not currently eating with you all. I'm actually drinking a little bit. I have a little half bottle of wine because I don't know what I'm doing after dinner. My wife didn't tell me. I am drinking one of those Tempranillos I mentioned. This is a Muga Reserva from 2014. It's a blend. So, we like blends. It's Tempranillo, Graciano, Garnacha, and Mozuelo. And you can forget all of those words because they're confusing grapes that you don't need to remember, but they make for yummy juice. And yeah, that's good. That's good. So here's what else I would caution you all before you make it to dessert or your dessert wine is, I'd probably, if you had a little bit of that sparkling wine left, go back to that and have a little bit of that to clean your glass out before going into the sweet wine. The grapes involved in making the Biaro is they're a little bit delicate, so I think the Merlot in the glass would overwhelm it. So I'm not a big fan of pouring water in things because that can water down the following wine. But you're also at home and can turn the glass like upside down in a sink, so that's not the worst case scenario. It's usually frowned upon in a restaurant if you put a little bit of water in your glass and then dump it out on the table. I don't know, people don't like that. It's very strange. It's a very strange thing. I guess it depends on where you hang out, though. Because, I mean, I've seen a lot of upturned beverages at Uncle Woody's back in the day. So none of you are old enough to remember that place, though. None of you. Mm-hmm. Let's see. What else do we have?
Percent. Yeah, you can go.
Okay. I'm interested in Cabernet Franc because it can be grown around here. It's pretty strong on its own, but it seems to be good for blending.
Yeah, it's really both. So depending on where in the world you are, you'll find it blended or by itself. So the grape is originally from the Loire River Valley. So this is the same place that like Sauvignon Blanc is from and Chenin Blanc. And Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc had a baby, Cabernet Sauvignon. I won't assume you know the genders of these plants, but the white wine is the male and the red wine is the female genetically in this case. But Cabernet Franc does better in our region than a lot of other grapes because it's naturally high in acid and it's a fairly late ripening grape. And we have a lot of heat here in the growing season. And actually this year, right? It's like 55 degrees out today. It's a pretty warm Christmas dinner. So it does pretty well. I mean, our region is not great for wine production because most of the best sites to grow grapes, people live there. And a lot of it would be the hillsides along the Ohio River, right? Like a couple hundred years ago, Mount Adams was all vineyards. And Nicholas Longworth, one of the founding patrons of Cincinnati, you might all know where like people tailgate for Bengals games, Longworth Hall. That was a huge winemaking facility, and they made sparkling wine. At one point in time, Cincinnati was renowned for making the second nicest sparkling wine in the world after champagne. And it was short-lived because the real estate costs went up so fast here that you couldn't keep a farm in Mount Adams. You had to build houses along the Riverview and things like that. So I had winemakers in town, and we're driving around, and we've come around like 275 coming from Kentucky into Ohio, like out in Anderson. And he just thinks like the hillside right there along the river and the highway would just be like the best place to plant grapes. But I imagine that's like somebody's backyard, like right off there. So I don't know if you would do that. And then I know that as I go east down the river, like there's a lot of people that just want to have like, you know, nice little camping style pads and little boat places and things like that. But that would be good. And really it's where the hills are because as you all know, we have a lot of flooding here on the Ohio River. It goes pretty dramatically up and down in height. But yeah, that's it. And if you get into like the flatlands a little bit farther north, you know, it's humid here, and humidity is not usually a friend to grapes. So where it would be windy is kind of out by Xenia, and they have so many tornadoes. I don't know that agricultural is really great out there because vineyards are really expensive to plant, like tens of thousands of dollars an acre. And then they don't produce any fruit that can make wine for 3 to 5 years either. So you really got to be committed to do that kind of thing. So yeah.
Have you ever had Norton wine?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So Norton is a different species of grape than all of the European ones we've been talking about. So primarily, most of the grapes that we drink in wine are Vitis vinifera, and those are European grapes, things like Chardonnay, Nebbiolo, Sauvignon, et cetera, et al. And what we have here in America is Vitis lambrusca. So it's just a different species of grape. Other very famous grapes you would know would be like Concord, like of Smucker's jelly fame, is also of that species. Baco Noir is probably the most widely produced wine that is dry out of those things. And really what you find with that species of grape is the rootstocks are used all over the world because America is home to a louse called Phylloxera vixtrera. And essentially it's a microscopic little bug that likes to eat the roots and suck out all the juice and sap. And because it's microscopic and it really started to hit the vines of the world in the 1800s, nobody knew why vineyards all over the entire planet were dying. So like basically it was really like some Europeans brought some American grapevines back to Spain and France and Germany and Italy to see how they would grow over there. And it brought this little louse with it, and it decimated the entire world of wine except for Chile, which is very isolated, right? Huge mountain on one side, ocean on the other. And then there are pockets of place where all of the soil is sand, and the louse cannot reproduce the sand. So really great old vine Zinfandel from like Oakley and Lodi is totally good because that little louse can't get to it. A couple spots in France and a couple spots in Australia, but essentially the whole world of wine is grafted rootstock. And that's exactly like what you heard about in school, like back in grade school. You plant something, it grows, you whack it off, and you tape something else to the top of it, and now you have kind of a hybrid plant. And that's just so that the rootstocks can live. So that's really what you get. But yeah, Norton is foxy, is how we politely refer to the aromatic character of the wine and the grapes. Not different than what we're used to as fine wine drinkers. But I would take a Norton over like a peach wine from Tennessee any day, personally. That stuff is like all sugar and no acidity. It reminds me a lot of boozy Kool-Aid, which is also fun. I mean, that you do you. I'm not going to judge you. So yeah. Not bad. What we got there? Cool. Yeah, I got a good shot of a table now. Melanie, good table shot. I like it. All right. Good. Let's see there. I don't know how many of you are on social media and how many of you follow like our local chefs, but they're all freaking out right now about all going out of business with the different rules and how they change and things like that. So if you have a local restaurant that you really like, my suggestion would be to maybe get some carry out or go and dine if you're comfortable doing that, because right now there are claims that about 83% of independent restaurants will close in the next 6 months, which is weird and scary. Who knows? You know, America is a great country for the Phoenix, and things burn down and come back up pretty well. But you know, if you like Jose Salazar, like getting some carryouts from Mita's not a bad idea. You know, Dave Falk has started doing this kind of similar packaged meal with wine pairing out of Boca. Not everybody's downtown, but most people could use a little help. The larger restaurant chains really don't have that problem. How the relief stimulus bills were structured is they got a lot of relief and the little guys didn't. So places like Capitol Grill and the like, no shortage of funding at all. Just so you know, if you want the inside baseball on independent restaurants.
Well,
Yeah,
we're
Salazar.
interested in helping out restaurants. So if anybody has any suggestions on places that have food that handles carry out well, because we don't live downtown.
Yeah. What part of town are you in again? Robert, what part of town?
We live north of, live like out
Mount Healthy.
Mount Healthy, close to 275.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm trying to think. My friend Melissa lives out there. I don't know about a ton of restaurants, but so if you're talking about the west side, like the independent restaurants I could think of would be the things kind of more in like the inclined plane, like Som Wine Bar, inclined plane house. I know that's not particularly close to where you are. Well, it's actually not a hard drive either. Those would be good. Oh, a really great Italian restaurant just opened up on the west side. Now I can't remember the name of it. And I hope they're still open because they really were like opening in like April or May. Oh, if it comes to me, I will make sure I put it in the chat box. But yeah, I mean, realistically, personally, I would maybe discourage you from buying gift cards and actually do carry out, because while gift cards is normally a great way to support a restaurant, if they go out of business, that gift card is now just a piece of plastic in your pocket, unfortunately. So, yeah. And I don't think you have to be downtown to do that. And I imagine that the pizza places are doing pretty well. I mean, like, don't tell anybody because I live in Hyde Park, but like Trotta's is my favorite pizza in town. And it's like a drive-through pizzeria, like beer shack, and it's fantastic. So,
what about Christmas dinner? Do you know any of I live in East Walnut Hills, so I'm very flexible.
Yeah.
And so do you have any suggestions for Christmas dinner carry out or,
Yeah. So if you are in East Walnut Hills, the best restaurant to support for you specifically would be Branch, right at Woodburn.
I emailed them today, John Ford.
They're fantastic. Joanna's fantastic at life and all things, and crazy good at things. Deer Restaurant in Hyde Park Square, which is fairly new. It's in the old Teller space in Hyde Park Square. Like they are doing this style of packaged, pre-made dinners. National Exemplar, which is a sister restaurant to the Phoenix, has something put together. Cork and Cap, also in Hyde Park Square, is doing like a Christmas dinner kind of pickup kind of thing as well. Some restaurants are having people pick up on the 24th so that they can be closed on the 25th. Some on the 25th itself. Oakley Wine Bar is usually doing great things as far as carryout products. I know they're mostly known for also, which is a cheese shop down in Findlay Market. But they've been doing some great things as far as carryout goes, particularly on Sundays, which is often a challenging night to find good carryout from independent restaurants. Those all come to mind right now. Just avoiding downtown. The old, what's it called now? Postmark in the old La Post space in Clifton, doing great carryout stuff right now. So I think it's like, it's not quite Ludlow. It's just off Ludlow around the corner from the movie theater. Like they're doing fantastic things.
It's on Telford.
Telford, exactly. That's exactly where it is. So those would be some just off the, Kiki and College Hill. Awesome. That's a great call. Let's see there.
Hyde Park's hard to park. That's one problem.
It can be. It can be. Hyde Park is, it's strange. There's a gigantic parking lot behind the north side of the square that you can access from Michigan or Edwards.
I know that. Yes.
So like that's kind of a win, but like if you were just doing pickup, I mean, I would literally probably drive around the square for like 5 minutes waiting for somebody else to move. And then they have 2 green meters on the north side of the square, one at the very, very far west end at Edwards and one in the middle. Those are 10-minute only parking. So you can kind of usually hover and shark around and get one of those spots. And it might not be the kindest thing, but like I'll park pretty much anywhere to run in and grab carryout. I'm not really I don't follow all the rules if I'm only going to be there for 5 minutes. That's just me. I'm not going to block people in and just throw my hazards on, but like maybe I'm in a place where there's a sign that says never park here. And then I run in real fast, off an intersection or something like that.
So I figured I would have to go on Christmas Eve. Do you know of any that are open on Christmas doing carryout?
I don't, and I think mainly it's because we like to cook here, so I haven't really thought too much about actual Christmas dinner. And then also not hosting an entire family of in-laws this year, I haven't really had to think too hard about it. But yeah, I don't know. I know those folks are doing it. E&O Kitchen, I think, is doing it on Christmas Day. That's on Edwards in the old Beluga space, just north of Arthur's on Edwards. And yeah, I think so. And then obviously there's the great tradition of Christmas carryout, Oriental Walk, China Gourmet, and Cream Papaya. I mean, I don't know if any of you know, it's Happy Hanukkah, by the way. And but like the great tradition is like Oriental Walk and China Gourmet and Green Papaya have like lines out the door on Christmas traditionally. And usually people are trying to go eat there, but this year it's just going to be carry out. And I'm a big fan of all 3 of those, even though only one of those 3 buys wine for me.
While I'm on, I wanted to say hi to Nancy and Bob. Thank you.
Sure.
We have a tradition of Christmas pizza, green and red, half sauce, half pesto.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, Oriental Walk's been doing great carry out this whole time. Yep, Veracruz is great. Yep. All good suggestions over there. Yeah, I double park all over Clifton also. It's almost like designed to not park that neighborhood. But it's old. It's older than cars. That's why. Raiders. All right, cool.
One time I rented a car in Italy and asked them about the parking regulations in Italy. And the guy just laughed at me.
Yeah. Try not to hit people. And actually, if you hit people, it's really the person's fault, right? And the pedestrian's fault. That's great. That's great. All right. Is anybody moving towards dessert? I don't want to rush anybody. I'm kind of trying to catch little glimpses of tables and wine glasses. But your last wine is from Elio Peroni. And actually, Elio was Stefano's uncle. So it's no longer Elio running the winery. Stefano was a motocross racer. So think F1, but with motorcycles. And he inherited his uncle's vineyard and then later purchased an extremely old vine vineyard back in 1999. And he essentially makes 3 grape varieties, and he makes them really extremely well in Asti, which is in Piedmont. He makes a beautiful Barbera, favorites. He makes, I think, the world's best Moscato. I've never had a Moscato as good as his. And then he makes this Bigarro blend, or Bijarro, if you would prefer your Italian pronunciation. And that's 50% Moscato and 50% Bracchetto. And Bracchetto is a strange, gnarly red wine from Piedmont. So Piedmont has a lot more varieties than Dolcetto, Barbera, and Nebbiolo, and this is one of them. And it's really not very popular to be planted. So this wine is fairly unique. It is pink because it is a red wine and a white wine blended. So all that color is coming from contact with the skin of the Bracchetto grape. I think that it's beautiful wine. You can drink as much as you want. I don't know exactly, but your label probably says about 5% alcohol by volume, meaning that the strength of that entire bottle is right up there with about 2 cans of Budweiser. So you're in pretty good shape if you wanted to drink that whole bottle of pink wine yourself. It's one of those lovely things. It's going to be semi-frizzante, which is, bubbles, but not as strong as the first wine, right? So it's going to be a little bit less effervescent, but still quite lovely. And we're really trying to match sweet on sweet with this one. So with your dessert, there's really a few different ways to go about pairing to dessert. And if you put sweet on sweet, that's usually a pretty good winner. You can do kind of sweet and alcoholic. That usually wins too. You can think of like a port or a Madeira, or like a Marsala in some cases. Although most of us just cook with that nowadays. There's not a lot of great quality there. And then the other way to do it is you can really just go with coffee and then have like a bourbon or a scotch or a cognac after dinner. But I like sweet wine. It's something I've always loved. You'll find the same kind of scenario here if you had the 2 different glasses. The white wine glass is going to give you a lot more fruitiness and punchiness, and the flute will help you retain the bubbles, which you might want because this is not a very highly effervescent wine. I mean, I love this wine. The Bracchetto brings so much fruitiness and punchiness to it. I think it's just a really lovely, good thing. And I was hoping they would kind of go, do they still stick with the peppermint cream on the dessert? So hopefully, all right, good, yeah. You never know. Sometimes chefs make changes last minute on me. I don't get the memo always, but oh yeah, Oreos. Oreos are awesome. Oreos are vegan too. I don't know if you knew that. Weird.
The sweet wine tastes really good after that heavy steak and Merlot. I mean, this really
it's fruity and punchy, right? Like it's supposed to be fruity. And again, like fruity and sweet are kind of words that get confused in wine, just like dry and tannin. So like if you have a really fruity wine, it doesn't mean that it has sweetness to it. It just smells fruity and punchy. Mm-hmm. This one is fruity and punchy and has sugar on it. So I think it makes for a lovely combination. We're huge fans of this wine at our house. They make them in half bottles too, and I will absolutely drink a half bottle after dinner myself. It's just so fun. It's so fun to do. But yeah, so yeah, it's old vine. It's a fairly ancient grape that's really not in vogue, and really they put a lot of care into the vineyards. And so this would be the only wine out of the 3 that's like made by a person from fruit where they own the vineyards, where the other 2 are more on the negociant level where they're purchasing from friends and neighbors. So it's fairly unique. It's fairly unique. And I think that he makes the best sparkling sweet wine in Italy, and Italy's pretty much got a lock on that category. So it's pretty special. It's pretty nice. Yeah, hopefully that goes well. goes well with all the dinner things, you know, for sure. And again, like when we talk about pairing and we talk about moving you through a wine dinner, like I've been doing a few more of these virtually. I did a couple of outside and people's backyards kind of wine dinners this summer, where like they would hire a chef to come out and do this, and like I felt comfortable because I was outside doing it, and like it wasn't like sparkling, white, rosé, red, sweet. We were kind of dancing all around and keeping your palate refreshed. You know, if you kind of do the subtle, oh, the wines are going to get heavier and richer and more tannic, you know, your palate can really fatigue out. So like switching back and forth, I think is really refreshing. If you ever go to a wine tasting, and I'm sure some of us have been to like the Cincinnati wine bonanza that we have here. It's like 3 days long. It's really important to like refresh your palate. You can't just taste like 30 straight Cabernets or Merlots or Syrahs or even Pinots. It's really wine or a glass of sparkling wine or go sweet for a wine or two to help reset your palate. You know, it's like if you were looking at, so like you're trying to figure out, you lost the lid to the paint can for, you know, and you got to like match the color on the wall, and you like snap a photo and it doesn't come up right, and you're at Lowe's and you see like all 70 hues of pink. They kind of all look the same after a while. The same thing can happen to your palate with wine. So it's good to like throw a blue card in the middle of the pink every once in a while to help create that contrast. So I'm glad you enjoy that. Cool. I like it. Porch pounder. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Yes, Party Source carries everything. Party Source is the Jungle Gyms of booze. Anytime somebody says, where can I get this obscure food? You always say, well, did you try Jungle Gyms? And if you try to find some obscure booze, you say, did you try Party Source? And that's usually kind of the best thing about living here in Cincinnati, is that we have both of those kinds of things. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. Left-handed typing. Yep. So good. That's good. How's dessert though? The wine seems to be doing well. I'm a huge fan of dessert. It usually disappears in a few bites in my house. That's just how I like to do it.
Yeah, the peppermint whipped cream is really good. It's like not too pepperminty. It's just right with the wine and the chocolate.
Oh, great. Yeah, so peppermint's like kind of it's a pretty challenging pairing, because peppermint is like a very distinct, strong flavor that has no analog in wine, right? There's no wine smells of peppermint. Some wines smell a little bit of spearmint, but it's so subtle you have to kind of look for it to find it. So you really have to find things that's kind of like that contrast, right? Like just like your wardrobe, right? If you wear black pants, you probably don't wear a black shirt. Same kind of thing, right? You want to wear something with some color, some zest about. I'm just giving you a hard time, Jennifer. My wife is a sign language interpreter. She wears black head to toe. I'm just saying, if you wear, navy blue shoes and navy blue pants with a navy blue belt, maybe you wear like a light blue shirt. Just saying. Maybe black. I didn't want to pick on anybody wearing black. Now that I'm noticing everybody's wearing black. Oh my gosh, I just attacked all of you.
Well, we're all wearing red and black.
That's true. That's true. Well, that makes sense though for this group, right? That's true. That's good. I think I can't remember why, but I've seen the red and black combo in this group before. There's something there. Something there. So yeah, that's great. All right, what do we have here? Yeah, that's how my wife and I met. So I used to be a teacher at Cincinnati State. I used to teach composition, rhetoric, poetry, literature, and economics, because why not throw something weird in the mix? And she was a sign language interpreter for one of my students in a Comp 101 class. And that's how we met. So for a whole semester, I tried to ignore her professionally, because about going to the bathroom where you eat is usually discouraged. And then so I failed my deaf student. So she would come back the following term. I'm kidding. He failed because he didn't turn anything in. And he came back again the following term. And near the end of the semester, she invited me to watch her interpret at the oh, what's that little theater on Vine Street, like off Central Parkway? Ensemble Theater. She was interpreting. Oh man, it's Lewis Carroll. There's a bunny rabbit and a little girl. Alice in Wonderland. There it is. My brain doesn't. It's I'm like 275. I never just get there. I gotta go around, you know. And yeah, that was it. Our first date was really not a date. I went to watch her interpret a play, and then I took her out for a burger, a beer, and dessert at the Rock Bottom Brewery, which now I would probably have taken her somewhere different. My palate's a little bit more sophisticated, but yeah, that's kind of all it all happened. That was a long time. We'll be married 10 years in March, so that's pretty cool. So I met her at least over 10 years ago. I also don't count it as our first date, and it makes her very upset.
Hello there. I just want to mention that we are retired faculty from Cincinnati State, and
Yeah.
my office used to be right next to the interpreter training program, and I
Yeah.
know all those guys.
Absolutely. So I was in the English department. Bob Jekakovic was there. Andrea Leslie, Jeff Wolf, who's now a dean, was head of the English department. I met Jeff Wolf at a rock concert at the Mad Hatter in Covington. I complimented his Bauhaus t-shirt. We became chatting, and that's how I got a job at Cincinnati State. Because I talked to the chair unknowingly about awesome indie rock and roll from the early 80s. And you got to collect those people. There's not a lot of us out there. So we just chatted, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm a graduate student at the other college in Cincinnati. We don't talk about that on these things. I know it's like they were blue, you guys were red. It's very confusing. And yeah, so he's like, oh cool, if you're an active student, I can hire you as an adjunct. Just finish your degree like within 2 years. So that's what I did. And I taught there for 7 years. And then that's what kind of, I went back into the restaurant world when I kind of saw that adjunct for life was maybe not the best financial decision.
Jeff rocks. We like Jeff a lot.
Oh yeah, he's a hoot. He is always honest and quick-witted, which I truly appreciate. And I will often forgive him from being from upstate. I think he's from Akron or Toledo. They're the same to me. I'm judging upstate Ohio. I don't know. They're all the same. I'm sure they think Dayton and Cincinnati are the same down here. I don't know. Who cares? We're in the good part of the state. And I know that because you all are down here.
The new cool program at Cincinnati State is a beer program.
Ooh. Is that through the culinary school? Because that's really awesome. I know my friend Laura Landau taught some of the wine education over at Summit as well. And Lindsay, she interpreted a bunch of the baking classes, which has been really great for me because she basically got to sit through the baking classes as an interpreter like a dozen times. So
we had Laura. So for the holiday party 2 years ago, when we did at the Taft Museum of Art, Laura was our wine sommelier for that.
Oh, she's great. She's great. She's super knowledgeable. Personally a friend. She is pure Kansas though, so watch out. She got a lot of that Kansas stuff going on, both KU and being from Kansas. And yeah, she's a hoot. I love her. She's fantastic. Great wine mind. Fantastic all around. And an excellent gardener. I don't know if you knew that was like her thing is like 2 green thumbs. Her backyard is basically like a jungle. It's pretty but like a cultivated one, like on purpose. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. So yeah. Now you might remember this is my coronavirus hair. Now that I don't see people in reality anymore. You might remember I had like a buzz. My hair looked more like Russell's last time we were talking. Hindsight.
Get a flow bee. George Clooney uses it.
Oh, I love those things. The vacuum things. I totally remember those. Those were great. I just wear hats now. I just put a hat on. And then nobody knows how long it is. Kind of comes out the side. I got a new car, so I've got the Sirius radio thing. So you just hear the Grateful Dead blowing out of the sides of the car and my long hair. It's like I'm back in the 90s. It's fantastic.
J Matt, what other wine would you have paired this dessert with?
So mousse is one. If you do chocolate, a pretty common pairing with that is port wine. from Portugal, usually a fortified sweet red wine. Essentially what they do is they make red wine, and then right around 11% alcohol, they usually add brandy to it, which kills off all the yeast, kills the fermentations, but it leaves sugar from the fermentation, and they crank it up. That would go really well. Personally, I think that you get what you pay for almost exactly dollar for dollar in port. So there's not always a great value in port. You really kind of get what you pay for. And if you splurge on the $40 bottle of port, it's really good. And if you try to find the $10 bottle, that's dusty in the bottom row of the grocery store, it's not very good. So I think that if you were expanding your budget a bit, I think a really good, like the 10-year ports from like Noval or from Taylor's would be like really excellent with this. But it just kicks up your budget. And I think that's one thing. And then, but I think that with dessert, you got to be really wary of dry wines, because sugar in your food and lack of sugar in your beverage can get pretty harsh. And a universal example that everybody seems to have had an experience with is Prosecco and wedding cake. And you've been to a wedding, and all the people that don't drink alcohol loved the cake, and all the people that don't eat sweets loved the Prosecco, and the people that had both hated both. And it's really because they clash too much, right? So if the person had chosen a semi-sweet Prosecco, which totally exists, that would be okay. That would be a good pairing. But it's not, most of us don't like to drink semi-sweet Prosecco. It's just kind of a very niche category that I think is really only good with like wedding cake and that type of stuff. So there's that. But realistically with Moose, again, I would never be hesitant to go back to a bold sparkling wine. Another Cremant, a high-end California sparkling wine. I do think that some of those can have a little bit of residual sugar in them as well, and still be considered dry. And really, sparkling fixes a lot of things on pairings because the effervescence is going to become the main factor on your palate, more so than the other structural components. So, like, champagne goes great with fried chicken. It goes great with oysters. It goes great with mousse. It goes great with hard candy. It goes great with eggs and like bacon and eggs. It's like, and they largely do that effervescence, and that really is what makes it such a universal pairing. Even though most of us really think of it as a celebratory drink only, right? We drink it New Year's Eve. We drink it when someone gets a promotion. We toast somebody's birthday with it. We don't always think of it as a serious wine, but yeah, that would be the other direction I'd go. I'd probably go with a sweet Madeira too. Madeira is going to be a little bit, it's Madeirized, which is ironic because it's from the island of Madeira, which is a Portuguese island in the Atlantic. But what they do with that wine is they make the wine as if you were making port, and then they slowly heat it up and oxidize it, and then slowly bring the temperature back down so the wine is completely stabilized. You can open a bottle of Madeira today, forget to put the cap on, and it will taste exactly the same this time next year because they've already heated it up and oxidized it and stabilized it with more alcohol. So it's more like a spirit in that sense. But if you do a Malmsey, for example, which is a variety of Malvasia, they're usually rather sweet and would go fantastic with something like this, for sure. Again, though, those, you get what you pay for. And really, the really good Madeiras are like $60, $70 a bottle, which would be like, I don't know how much this dinner cost you, but like, I imagine most of the budget. So, yeah. But if you share it amongst everybody, because the alcohol is at like 20%, it gets a little easier. When we can all be in the same room, that's an easier pairing to do.
Years and years ago, I once heard a poem that started out with, "Have some Madeira, my dear." And I think it went on to seduction.
It's great. The founding fathers were really into it. So if you're nostalgic for American history, I mean, you can look at the alcohol tab of like the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the end of the War of Independence, and like those guys hammered like barrels of Madeira. Like barrels, that's like hundreds of cases of wine. Like, I don't know how many people were there. It's still a very impressive bar tab. John Adams particularly was renowned for blind tasting them. There's an on-record one in a journal from Thomas Jefferson where like Adams literally got 14 out of 17 Madeiras completely correct. The year they were produced, the grape variety, and the producer. It's like these guys were, I mean, they didn't have a lot of the modern drugs that we have. I mean, like, so they probably did a lot more alcohol, self medicating than we do nowadays. Maybe not. I don't know your life. But like, that's awesome. So Madeira is like the most American of all alcoholic beverages after like whiskey, which is pretty great. It's a pretty American tradition because we're a grain country, right? Like Iowa can feed the whole planet, right? That's what I keep reading. Like if you just farmed all of Iowa, it'd be a logistical problem, not like a volume of food problem.
So what is Madeira made out of?
So the same thing. So it's grapes. So the four traditional grapes are Malmsey, which is a Malvasia grape, Cercial, a cousin of Riesling. They make rainwater, and then they make Boal or Buell, which is a Portuguese grape that you would find in things like port. And essentially what they do is they make the wines, fortify them, Madeirize them, and then bottle them. So essentially what you do is you have varying levels of sweetness based on the grape variety's inherent character, Malmsey being the sweetest, Cercial being the driest. They then add the neutral brandy, neutral grape spirit, stop all the fermentation, and then they Madeirize the wine, which is just heating it up and slowly cooling it down. So it's very similar to port, except for it has that addition of adding a lot of oxygen and adding the heat. So you will get a more raisinated character. It's like so many things in life. They refer to it as it tastes more Madeirized. So they're just using the same word over and over again. So if you don't know what that word means, it's not very helpful. But you're going to get an oxidized note, and you're going to see a lot more raisinated characters because it's essentially what it tastes like when you heat it up and cool it down. Is it makes it more like a raisin character. And like I think raisins would be bad in this mousse, but a beverage that has some raisinated character would not be a bad thing necessarily. Because it isn't like the, those Thompson seedless California grapes, with the songs and the dances and the little red boxes with the Indian girl on it. It's a totally different vibe. Let's see there. All right.
I had to just pop on to say hello.
Hi, Joyce.
Yeah.
Hi. David stepped away for a moment, but we were off camera while we were stuffing our faces with this incredible meal.
That's great. So yeah. All right.
This meal is delicious.
Russell.
Lauren and Russell and J-Matt. It's really delicious.
Lauren and the UnCorked crew, the committee, Emily, Nancy, and Jenna and Melissa, Ruthie. Devin is newer to the committee. I don't think that she's on tonight, but she joined the committee a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's.
Greg was just like, you can do this one every time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Congrats. Wonderful job, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, J-Matt, for putting together great pairings again.
Thanks so much. The pairings are the quick part for me. I think about this all the time. Like being able to interact and hang out with you all for a couple of hours is great. So that makes me happy to hang out with you all. And it's virtual, but I didn't have to wear a suit. I get to wear my slippers and just my normal clothes. It's kind of nice.
Yes.
You got pants on?
I thought about not wearing pants, but I'll even prove it. I will say though, if you're in the market for new pants, my wife got me Prana Brion pants, and they look like khakis, but they feel like pajamas. So they're not inexpensive. I got them at REI, and I'm never buying another pair of pants ever again.
Quite a nice place.
Well, this was fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. You made
We
our
did not drink the rosé. What should we pair it with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rosé is a great dessert wine in this case. I think that it would be great all on its own, kind of as a digestif. It's like if you just wanted to have something a little bit sweet, it could act as its own dessert as well. And alcohol is really, really low on it, so you don't have to be overly concerned about overconsumption with it. Like it's really like the strength of a Budweiser. It's like 5% alcohol by volume, so pretty safe. But consume the whole bottle in one sitting because it's sparkling.
Well, we can't drink that whole thing.
well,
Sugar for my brain, I'm afraid. Little
we're
teaspoon.
home, so at least we can drink and not worry about it, right?
How come you're not on camera, Phyllis?
Ask my electrical engineer husband. No comment.
Bad laptop.
Why?
Wah, wah.
We miss you.
We miss you too. We miss Mark and Elizabeth and Jen.
This
Jen and
Oh,
everyone.
I need to hold up the big mirror, and I see Phyllis, and I see Bob, and I see. Nobody remembers Mama Room.
Bob and Phil. Steve. This really,
Well,
Matt. This has been fantastic, and Phoenix done an amazing job.
the food just spectacular, and I'm serious about the fillet. You know, we weren't real sure whether we'd screw it up or not, and it turned out beautifully.
Yeah.
Bob cooked fillet.
Are you just on with them?
No, I'm on with it.
No, she's everybody. Okay, Dave.
Yeah, I don't know how to.
I don't think there's too many of us left, but we're on with everybody.
Okay.
Oh, most of the here still. We're all tuned in, listening.
Yep, we're all here.
All of you are in corporate America. Yeah, all of you are in corporate America know how to participate.
Who is
I'm
Mark?
sorry. I don't know this techno stuff.
Right. Don't believe him. He just hasn't figured it out.
Buzz.
Oh no!
Party foul.
Yes. It's Bob. What can I say? But we love him.
Well, thank you all for joining us this evening for our virtual holiday party. In 2021, our first virtual event will be on Thursday, January 28th with Nicola's. So be on the lookout for those details and registration to come within the next week or so before the holidays. And thank you for joining us. And thank you, J-Matt, again, for leading a wonderful tasting.
Thank you so much for having me. Chef Jack Hemmer from Nicola's and I used to have dueling balconies, so we would toss each other beers when we ran out of when we ran out of stock. Jack's fantastic chef. You're gonna have a great dinner with those guys.
Yes. Thank you all. Happy holidays.
Thank you all for listening. Happy holidays.
Please.
Bye.
Happy holidays to everyone.
Yes.
Great to see you all.
Great to see you. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, how are you?
Good, good. Yeah,
We'll have to get together sometime and catch up.
I know. Yes, definitely.
Haven't
By
seen you-
Zoom, if nothing else, huh?
Right, right.
Or
Hopefully
just
we'll be out of this dystopian hell in a few months, and so we can
Yeah,
go back
we
to
can
real life.
start